Hey, folks, Roland Martin here. It is the Friday, September 28th edition of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I'm broadcasting live from the Tom Joyner Morning Show studios here in Dallas, Texas. On the show today, Brett Kavanaugh, FBI. First of all, the committee approved him moving forward, but there's going to be an FBI investigation. We'll tell you all those details. Tons of women yesterday got arrested in Washington, D.C., protesting his confirmation. We'll talk to a couple of them who had the handcuffs slapped on them. So we'll talk about that. Also, Night School, starring Tiffany Haddish and Kevin Hart. It premieres this weekend. We will hear from Tiffany Haddish and Kevin Hart. And we'll talk with Kay James. She's the first African-American to run the prominent, the powerful Heritage Foundation. She's a Black conservative and proud of it. You want to hear her story. It's time to bring the funk. Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
All right, folks, more drama on Capitol Hill today in the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation hearing. The Senate Judiciary Committee, they did move forward to move his nomination from the committee to the floor. The vote was along party lines, but Arizona Senator Jeff Flake said he cut a deal. He would only vote for Kavanaugh in the hearing if they agreed to delay the vote on the floor for a week. Now, earlier in the morning, Flake, he said that he was going to vote for Kavanaugh completely, but he was accosted in a video, and this is what happened that caused him to say, wait a minute, there has to be an investigation.
On Monday, I stood in front of your office with Addie Barkan. I told the story of my sexual assault. I told it because I recognized in Dr. Ford's story that she's telling the truth. What you are doing is allowing someone who actually violated a woman to sit in the Supreme Court. This is not tolerable. You have children in your family. Think about them. I have 2 children. I cannot imagine that for the next 50 20 years, they will have to have someone in the Supreme Court who has been accused of violating a young girl. What are you doing, sir?
I was sexually assaulted and nobody believed me. I didn't tell anyone, and you're telling all women that they don't matter, that they should just stay quiet, because if they tell you what happened to them, you're going to ignore them. That's what happened to me, and that's what you're telling all women in America, that they don't matter. They should just keep it to themselves, because if they have told the truth, you're just going to help that man to power.
Folks, stunning video there. That took place in the morning, and it was 4 hours later when Jeff Flake said, I will vote for this, but we've got to then have this investigation. So the Senate Judiciary Committee sent a letter to the White House asking Donald Trump to open this investigation. He agreed with that. Donald Trump also was quoted as saying that Dr. Christine Ford's testimony, that she was a credible witness. Well, if she was credible, does that mean that she was telling the truth and Kavanaugh was lying? Again, major developments today. Now, Lisa Murkowski, the senator from Alaska, she says she agrees with Flake in terms of doing this investigation. The bottom line is here. It's a 51-49 vote right now. The difference in the United States Senate. Republicans have 51, Democrats have 49. If two Republicans say they're not going to vote for Kavanaugh, he will not move forward. That's why this is so critical. Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee already on the record saying he is going to vote for Kavanaugh. Senator Susan Collins of Maine has not said how she is going to vote. Also, Heidi Heitkamp of Montana has not decided. And we have not heard from Joe Manchin of West Virginia how he is going to vote. They are both Democrats. But Senator Doug Jones of Alabama, he has said he simply cannot vote for Kavanaugh. Bottom line, they don't have the votes. That's why they're calling for this investigation. And so lots of drama there. We'll see what happens over the next week with this investigation. Mark Judge, of course, he is the friend of Brett Kavanaugh. His attorney has already said he will cooperate with the FBI. It was a busy, busy day yesterday, folks. Also today on Capitol Hill, more than 1,000 protesters lined the halls of Capitol Hill yesterday. Many of them were also arrested. 60 of them were arrested. One of those, of course, is Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver, often a guest on our show, leadership strategist, and also Reverend Cherie Dickerson. She's co-founder of Black Lives Matter Oklahoma. Both of them join us there in D.C. First of all, Avis and Cherie, it give us a sense of what it was like in terms of the tension and all of that on Capitol Hill as folks were making their way down the hallway, senators coming out with breaks, having to walk the gauntlet of protesters.
I want to give that a start.
It was very tense, Mr. Martin. However, the support and the solidarity that was shared with myself and the other protesters was absolutely amazing and very humbling. It was a life-changing experience for myself, and I've been involved in other actions before. But yesterday was definitely different, and today was certainly historic.
Avis?
Absolutely. I mean, it was palpable that the people who were there because they had some sort of personal connection to this issue. But it's not to say that it was all women. I mean, there were women there, there were men there, there were people, black people, people of every race and ethnicity that you can imagine. And so this is an issue that cuts across America, and everyone could see the blatant unfairness of just ramrodding this nominee through when such serious allegations have been made without even having a very real hearing to really tease out all of the facts rather than just put on the kabuki theater that I would argue that they put on the other day.
People say protests don't matter. It mattered in this case when it came to that elevator confrontation.
Absolutely it mattered. Absolutely it mattered. And it mattered because, you know, Flake is one of these people that likes to set himself up as a Republican who is more moderate, as someone who would actually maybe listen and try to bring the two sides together. Now, historically, he's done this through very flowery speeches, but when it comes to actually voting, he tends to vote to the right. So it was he really did need an intervention, and I think today he got one.
Cherie.
Yes. Protests have always, nonviolent protests have always been successful, in my opinion, and we can think about some of the most notable protests that have occurred, especially those that have been led by Black women. And so we are continuing to be an integral part of this process and in bringing change.
Look, we now have a week. The FBI is going to do their investigation. They're going to interview various witnesses. What do you think is going to happen over the next 7 days?
It will be interesting to see. We know that Mark Judge is going to be a primary witness that needs to be interviewed. But who else? How broad is this going to go out? Will the interviewees extend beyond even those that are connected to the Blasey Ford case? Will they extend to the other allegations? Exactly how much information will be collected? And then what will happen with that information? You know, I am hoping that once this is done, that the senators actually do take some deep consideration of what's found. And ultimately, to be perfectly honest, I still would have loved to have had Mark Judge in there for questioning, because making a statement and having someone read a statement is one thing, but seeing someone in the flesh and having that person answer questions in real time can really go a long way towards really being able to determine whether or not that person is telling the truth.
Do you also expect that protesters will continue putting the pressure on? Do you expect them to continue to show up? The House members, they've all gone home to prepare for the midterms, but the senators, they're still there.
I believe that is going to happen. What I'm hoping is going to happen, since Kavanaugh showed how emotional he could get under a little bit of pressure, is that he's going to rescind his nomination because he doesn't want the FBI in his business and the truth to be revealed.
Absolutely. There's a reason why he didn't want them to go there in the first place. Absolutely.
First of all, I want to show y'all this here. I was flying to Dallas. I got to speak to the NAACP tomorrow in Fort Worth. And this video is making the rounds where they took the Sam Jackson character in Pulp Fiction and used the Brett Kavanaugh testimony. I got to play this for y'all. Check this out.
Now, let me take a wild guess here. You're Brett, right?
Correct.
I thought so.
I got into Yale Law School.
Check out the big brain on Brad.
That's the #1 law school in the country.
You're a smart motherfucker, that's right.
I had no connections there. I got there by busting my tail.
Looks like me and Vincent caught you boys at breakfast. Sorry about that. Did you have it?
Beer. I still like beer.
You mind if I have some of your tasty beverage to wash this down?
Sometimes I had too many beers, but I did not drink beer to the point of blacking out. And I never sexually assaulted anyone.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did, Brett.
He is warm, friendly, unassuming. He's the nicest person.
I don't remember asking you a goddamn thing.
Oh, I got to get y'all reaction to that video.
Hilarity, but I mean, so appropriate. Made my day.
Absolutely. I just, yes, and yes. Absolutely
Yeah, so
love it.
I had to play that. And so, Cherie, Avis, I appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll certainly be in contact as we continue to see what happens with the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh. All right, folks, got to go to a break. We'll be back on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
It is not light that is needed, but fire. Abolitionist and autobiographer Frederick Douglass.
All right, folks, our HBCU Giving Day School with Fisk University. If you want to give to Fisk University, go to fisk.edu, of course, located there in Nashville, Tennessee. And so we want to support our HBCUs. And so we give it up for Fisk University. Folks, Kevin Hart, Tiffany Haddish have a new movie coming out. It's called Night School. It premieres this weekend. It tells a story of two individuals. One is a teacher, Tiffany Haddish, and Kevin Hart, who is a student trying to get his GED. It is full of laughs. And I was in New York last week and had an opportunity to sit down and talk with both of them. Here's the conversation.
Folks, how you doing?
How you doing, man?
Oh, good. What, did I scare you there?
No.
Good to see both of you.
Always.
First thing, question. Iron sharpens iron.
Mm-hmm.
How did you two make each other better?
That's a great question, man. That's why you're you. I think you make each other better when there's a mutual level of respect, first and foremost. Admiration and appreciation for what you do, because you show up to work and you're excited. In this case, I'm full of information, full of knowledge, and I know that I was once in the same seat that she's in. And what was amazing for me along my journey was people that shared information.
Mm-hmm.
It just gave me knowledge. So
he shared so much with me and was so helpful. And like, while we were shooting this movie, I was doing a lot, he's doing a lot, but he was teaching me how to handle everything. And especially how to get them lines out right.
Basically, to balance the workload, but still make sure you're giving 100 on the projects that you're signing up to do.
You say you were doing a lot, but also you're not necessarily totally over the top. So it reminded me with Central Intelligence, where you sort of brought it down, and where Dwayne Johnson sort of went up. And so that balancing act, I think also is quite interesting.
Well, it was important. I think she was coming off of, she was coming off of Girls Trip. And the character that she portrayed in Girls Trip, you saw
Out
that
there.
character hit the screen, and it was, oh my God, funny from the top to the bottom, but she's crazy.
It's like she was off screen too while we were shooting it.
While we were shooting it, you was just at one concert.
No, I'm just saying, but I saw enough.
You saw enough.
I got him to dance with me and everything. I had him on the dance floor.
Will was giving me updates too.
Yeah, they was updating. So you was asking about.
That's who she is. I mean, look, that's what she is, who she is. But in this movie, I said it'd be really good to show some depth. It'd be good to show a nice balance. So to take that and bring it down a little bit and allow you to have levels, it's good to show that now as you're going up in your career. So Carrie, the character of Carrie is so different from the character in Girls Trip. And the character of Carrie helps pushes the story in night school. She's the backbone of the classmates, because we don't know our full potential until it's presented to us the way that she has to do it.
Trying to get your GED?
Yes. I don't know what I'm dealing with on the learning disability side until Carrie breaks it down.
Teddy, you, my friend, are dyslexic. You also have dyscalculia.
That's what I got.
We're not done. You also have a processing disorder.
I got a touch of prostate cancer. She didn't touch my ass one time.
Boy.
And after it's broken down, I now have the belief in myself that I can do what I need to do.
You had a hell of a year.
Yeah.
I was texting Tyler. I was like, dude, she in your movie too?
Yeah.
I mean, you cranking them out.
Bam, 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 bam. I learned from the best.
How many do you have now?
I got 3 movies coming out in 3 months, but we got probably about 4 more movies. There's 9 projects coming out next year. So.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's what
you're absolutely having a blast.
I'm having a good time.
And you still focus on, as we were texting, working this plan, your grand plan.
Oh yeah, my grand plan. Yes, yes. I have a master plan. I'm building the kingdom.
Gotcha. And have you sat down with him and talked about the kingdom?
Yeah, we've talked about it.
I hear about it all the time.
Yeah.
If Tiffany's got a thought, trust me, I heard about it.
I understand.
This is my big brother. He gonna hear it first.
Well, certainly good luck with it. Can't wait to see how the audience responds to it. And it was great chatting with you.
Always,
great chatting with you.
All right. Certainly good luck to Tiffany Haddish, Kevin Hart, and producer Will Packer and director Malcolm Lee. Folks, Kay James, she is the first African-American to lead the Heritage Foundation. It is the preeminent conservative think tank in this country. She has been a Black Republican all her life. Well, she's been Black all her life, but she's also been Republican all her life. And so I sat down with her over the summer to talk about her taking over the Heritage Foundation, what it means, and also what she thinks is important for Black America. And so we're going to actually have that for you. I really want you to listen to this because, again, we got Black folks on both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans. And look, when folks are in power, and Republicans are in power in state capitals, but also when it comes to D.C., it's always good to have some Black folks on the other side who we can talk to and communicate with. And so I certainly want you to check this conversation out. Certainly hope you enjoy it. And also pretty cool to be here, of course, doing the Roland Martin Unfiltered show in the studio, Tom Joyner Morning Show. So I want to appreciate Tom and his crew for allowing me to do this. I'm here in Dallas. Tomorrow I'm going to be, of course, in Fort Worth, speaking to the Fort Worth NAACP and also attending the Botham Jean rally. We'll be having that for you on Monday's show as well. So enjoy this. Here's my conversation with Kay James of the Heritage Foundation. So, Kay, how you doing?
I am surviving this thing called life.
So you've now been head of the Heritage Foundation for how long?
Just about 2 months.
All right. So how has it been? Obviously, there's no one who's looked like you sitting behind that desk. How has it been?
It's been an interesting ride. Being the first African American, being the first woman, being first sometimes and trailblazers sometimes can be a difficult path to go. But I have to say I was just overjoyed at the welcome that I received within the building, within the conservative movement at large, within the country at large. And so that part has been encouraging, thrilling. There's a lot of heavy mountains to climb. There's a lot of heavy lifting to do. There's a lot of work ahead.
And speaking of that, I mean, obviously this was a foundation. Your predecessor folks said it become too political. It should be more focused on issues and policy. For the folks who don't know, what is the Heritage Foundation?
Well, that's a great question. The Heritage Foundation was started almost a little over 40 years ago, actually, by some individuals who thought that conservative thought, ideology, and philosophy really had the correct answers to many of the difficult problems facing our country. They didn't see necessarily party politics as the way to go, so Heritage is not Republican or Democrat. The Heritage Foundation promotes conservative philosophy, ideology, and thought. And we do it by producing research, data, and analysis concerning some of the most pressing issues of the day. And so I think you're right. There are those who thought that perhaps we'd gotten too closely coupled with the Republican Party or certain Republican administrations. And we want to work with anyone who's interested in finding solutions to tough problems.
When we talk about issues that we're dealing with, and so when you say conservative issues and you say not being Republican or Democrat, the reality is there are conservative Democrats, just like there are moderate Republicans. Some would even say progressive liberal Republicans. And so how do you, though, deal with that when people don't necessarily see progressive, liberal, conservative? All they see is red, blue, Democrat, and Republican, and everything is defined that way.
Sure, sure. You know, I think it's less so today than years ago. There used to be more conservative Democrats, and there used to be more liberal Republicans. And I think what's happened is that this sort of toxic stew has taken over, and the lines are more sharply drawn and divided. And we find that now the Democrat Party is viewed as more progressive and the Republican Party is viewed as more conservative. I'm not sure that's actually the case because, as you point out, there are those individuals within those parties who do have some flexibility. But as a conservative, I am hopeful that I can have dialogue with Democrats and Republicans, and I will hold both their feet to the fire. You know, I remember, and you may know who actually said this better than I, that, you know, particularly as African Americans, we have no permanent friends and no permanent enemies, only permanent issues. I happen to believe that the issues are more closely aligned with conservative thought, philosophy, and ideology.
Such as?
Well, I'll tell you, my definition of a black conservative is someone who has the audacity to believe what their grandmother taught them. It's not deep, it's not complicated, it's not hard. And but we find many of those values today have been sort of set aside. And one of the things that concerned me was when I saw the Democrat Party shift from those particular values. In my family, you know, if someone got pregnant, they didn't even think about having an abortion. In my family, we raised those kids and the family came together. So the value and the dignity and the sanctity of human life, when I started out as a Democrat, it was okay to be a Democrat and hold that position. Nobody cared. But over time, that issue became so divisive and it became a Republican issue and not a Democrat issue. You remember Governor Casey from Pennsylvania, who was a
now
profoundly...
you're a senator.
Yeah.
Bob Casey.
Yeah. Well, that was his father,
That's right,
I think.
right.
Yeah. Who was profoundly pro-life. And I remember feeling hurt and disappointed when I, as a pro-life Democrat, was told there was no place for me in the Democrat Party. And that was a wake-up call. I tend to be a person of very not tend to be, I am a person of very strong faith. And when I saw at the Democrat conventions, as more and more they wanted to move away from that. And so my message to Democrats is, why did you cede the high moral ground to Republicans? Why did you do that? And so I think matters of faith, matters of life, issues with entitlements, by the way, I think welfare. Have a conversation about that and some of those larger issues at some time. Everybody needs a helping hand every now and then, and that's exactly what we should have. But it was never intended to be a lifestyle for generations and generations. So when I go in and talk about how to take that program and make it something that empowers people, lifts people up, gives them hope and opportunity, but not as a way of life, what people hear is, oh, you just want to take our check. You just want our money. But I want to do entitlement reform not because we need the resources or the money that's saved to balance the budget. I have no interest in balancing the federal budget on the backs of poor people. But I do want to create a system where people who genuinely need help can get it. But by the same token, my grandmother taught me to work for what I earned. So I want a work component in there. I want to get rid of marriage penalties in there, why people are penalized if they're on welfare and they get married. I want us to have compassionate policy, but I don't want policy which destroys and takes away initiative and hope. So things like that.
One of the things that is interesting to me when I have that conversation is that it is often discussed within this very narrow framework, as opposed to realizing where African Americans are being locked out of other systems. And so whenever I've been debating, I'll debate some conservatives or Republicans, they'll say, well, I don't get why African Americans look to the government. I said, well, first of all, you look at
well,
slavery.
You'd have to know our history to know the answer
to
that.
I said, I need you to understand why that's a different view than your particular view.
Yeah.
And they just can't understand that.
I got that. I understand it. The government was all we had. The government was there to protect us, of course. But we can't let the government become mom and dad to children out there. We need, so I get it, I understand, so I would never ask that question, but by the same token, I don't want to see us robbed of our creativity and our initiative and our drive by becoming so overly reliant on government. Yes, I get why we depend on government, because government is all we had. But I want to say to young people out there today, you know, I had a group of young moms, single-parent moms who were all on welfare at my house one time, and I invited them over. We were doing a thing, and so the young woman said, I'm fine. I get my check, and and so I'm good. And I said, you see that picture over there on the wall right there? And she said, yeah. I said, that one picture is probably about 6 months of your checks. I just wasn't satisfied with that. I want it more. And so I want you to want more. And I want you to have more. I don't want you to settle for a life of dependency. So for me, the drive for reform is less about let's save the government dollars. I look at movies like Hidden Figures, like The Great Debate, and I look at what we were like in the 1930s and 40s and 50s. I look at the thriving middle class that we had in the African American community, and I just realized that young kids, many of them in some urban communities, don't get to see that picture. That was a part of my existence and my growing up, and I want that for them. I want them to want more, and I want to create an America where they can have more.
When earlier you said being a black conservative, you go to a lot of places in black America, and you say, I'm a black conservative or a black Republican. You might have to put on a helmet and a shield.
Oh, I have to do that at Thanksgiving. What are you talking about?
And so, how does it make you feel when you have to deal with that? Because I mean, it can get rough.
Well, it can, Roland, except for one thing. I think when people know, and this is, I think that too many black conservatives have gotten disassociated and detached from their own communities. But when you have maintained those connections, and when you are there and people know who you are, I think that it is far easier. They may say, you know what, I don't agree with Kay, but I think she's really sincere and wanting to help her people. I may disagree with her, so it isn't as rough on me as it is perhaps on some others. And I challenge them to say, I think passion, love, concern covers a multitude of things. So I think if you are authentic and believable and present and in the community, it doesn't have to be that way.
Which is what I remember a few years ago on my show Washington Watch on TV One. Michael Steele and I were talking, and I said, a Republican Party is scared of black people. He said, they're scared of me. And of course, when that thing went out, people got all upset. And I kept saying, I said, look, as long as Republicans, meaning white Republicans, and to your point as well, some black Republicans, as long as you do not talk to, engage, sit down with, communicate with, or even say, look, we might disagree on these issues, but this is where we agree. Now let's work on them. I keep saying, as long as that happens, GOP not getting black votes,
right,
and not going to get support, because if you're unwilling to engage, no one sees a reason to vote for you.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I don't disagree with you.
And when you say that, the folks look at you, go, okay, kid, you know what you're talking about. And surely you're like, y'all do know I'm black. Y'all do know.
Yeah, I've said that on more than one occasion. Well, here's my argument or pitch or conversation when I am in all white conservative circles. I explain to them that by the year 2050, this country is going to be run by black and brown people. And I said, it is important for you to understand that my grandchildren are going to be running this country, not yours. So if you genuinely love this country, as you say you do, if you genuinely believe that conservative philosophy and ideology is the right one that will uplift, and I believe that, by the way, then you will put time, energy, effort, and resources in taking these messages into those black and brown communities to educate, to help, because at the end of the day, it is a shrinking group that you're speaking to.
Yet it seems as if the decision has been made, well, we're really going to ignore those groups and just try to turn out more folks over here. And you're right. We're actually 2043 is going to be majority minority. Yet still, it's not getting through when you begin to look at.
It's going to get through. It's going to get through. How many more elections have to be lost? How many more battles have to be lost? It will eventually sink in. And listen, I have not changed my tune. I have been preaching the same gospel and the same message for years. So don't miss the point that having said all of that, Heritage said, okay, you are president. So it is getting through, and I think people are getting that and understanding that. A part of my goal is, and I hope you can tell, I'm a happy warrior. I am optimistic. First thing I did was paint my yellow office because it's sunny and bright and optimistic. And I want to go places and have conversation and discussion where maybe conservatives have never been before. And I think that there is an opportunity, there is a time for that kind of dialogue and discussion. People are sick of the anger and the vitriol. Why do we have to hate each other because we have different ideas? I saw it on the right first, and I didn't like it there. And now I see it coming from the left, and I certainly don't like it or appreciate it there. So I think people of goodwill who genuinely want to solve some very complex problems are going to have to set that aside and say, let's sit down at a table. I have a friend who is probably about as progressive as one could get, and she and I were talking one time, and we said, if we got the politicians out of it, if we took all the interest groups and lobbyists out of it, we could probably solve the healthcare crisis in America today. But when policy is made in this town, follow the money, follow the lobbyists, follow the talking points. People are more concerned about votes and getting election. That's one of the reasons I'm excited about being at the Heritage Foundation, because I can step out of all of that and talk pure policy without worrying about getting reelected or trying to earn extra money as a lobbyist.
I'm in a meeting at the RNC, and with Reince Priebus and several of his other top folks. Tara Wall is there as well, and so we're talking about, this was leading to the 2016 convention, and she said, there is no group that hates us more than black women. She said it's not even close. If you look at the last election, 94% of black women voted for Hillary Clinton. When you look at some of these other different elections, and so we began to have this conversation, and she said, we could talk, she said, we get more support among black men. She said, but black women? She said, woo, as a black woman, what do you say to that? How does that also make you feel where sisters just, they are not trying to hear it?
Yeah. I have experienced some of that. And it's hurtful. It is extremely hurtful because these are people that I admire, respect, look up to. But I've also seen a break there, Roland, in the last few years. And I think that it is so important to be present and to be authentic. And so I have experienced a measure of acceptance even among those groups. I can remember being honored by some of those particular groups that have strong progressive and strong liberal leanings, yet they embraced me and lifted me up. And I think that's what we have to do as black folks. I think we have to recognize each other's accomplishments. It really, really disturbed me when we didn't celebrate Condi Rice more in the African American community. I don't care what you think about the administration she served in. That is one smart and incredibly talented, musically gifted African American women who has more charm and grace and dignity in her little finger than some of us have in our entire lives. We should celebrate that. I, as a matter of fact, often defended and celebrated Michelle Obama. I did an interview one time during the week of Barack Obama's inauguration. And so the question was, so how do you feel about this as a black Republican? And I don't know what they were expecting my answer to be. And I said, I am taking off my Republican hat and I am going to spend this week celebrating one of the most incredible things that I never thought I would live to see. Do y'all understand we have a black man as president of all these United States? That deserves to be celebrated. And I said, I'm going to celebrate it because I know I'm going to spend the next 4 to 8 years fighting him on some policies that I disagree with. But who can disagree with the fact that we had one of the most incredible families as leading our nation? And so whenever anybody would go in on Michelle or go in on the kids, I'd always jump to the defense. That's our First Lady. You know, I wish we could return the favor right now with the president's kids and family, because I think that should be off limits. But I always celebrated. And I think we as African Americans should celebrate each other and the victories that we have, and be glad, incidentally, that there is something called a black Republican. But the black Republicans, we have a responsibility and an obligation to recognize that if we are in the room, we are there to represent America's interest and the interest of our community.
So how does it feel when you have folks who attack the first black chairman of the Republican National Committee, Michael Steele? I've been on my show many times, and I mean, for him not to get invited to a luncheon, 2012, not to even get credentials to the convention, when they had a luncheon honoring former chairs, he wasn't invited. I mean,
it's ridiculous, and there are those of us who spoke loudly and called them out. And I said, if you know, I've said it once, I'll say it again. You come for Michael, you come for me. I mean, we have to support each other, and we have to have each other's backs. And Michael is one of the most incredibly talented. I mean, for crying out loud, he got elected in statewide office in Maryland. It was just so offensive to say that they elected him because of his race in that particular moment in time. And so, yes, it's a tough battle. Being a black Republican is not the easiest thing in the world.
Black folks who are not Republicans watch this and say, man, if y'all gonna diss him, I know you don't want to talk to me.
Well, now let's keep it real, because, you know, there's some stuff on the other side of the aisle as well.
Of course.
And I have seen how black folks have been treated in the Democrat Party. So I say a pox on all their houses. I'm just happy to be, you know, a conservative. There you go.
You mentioned in terms of earlier defending and being a Republican, and I'm sure you talk about Thanksgiving. I know when you went home for Thanksgiving, they threw so much Trump stuff at you, and
no, we had a Trump-free zone.
Oh, y'all do. So did y'all have rules written down?
Yeah.
Did y'all pass a sheet of paper out?
We didn't actually write them down. But you know what's so interesting? I have one of the most incredible families ever, and where I come from, it's family above politics, it's family above jobs, it's family above everything. And I kid about it, but I have to tell you, I've never felt more loved than when I'm at home with my family.
Do you feel a need to, there's some people who I've talked to, they say, look, I have to defend any criticism of Donald Trump as president?
No. Almost put an excellent in front of it. Heck no, I don't feel a need to do that. One, I feel a need to defend conservative values and principles, and when he does not go there, I don't. And, you know, I learned from my liberal progressive sisters, by the way, and I learned that they protected their guy their guys over the years, because their guys were giving them the stuff they wanted. So it's a little bit hypocritical now to say, how could you? Because I'm getting some stuff I wanted, just like you did.
And when they say, well, but surely you disagree, why won't you say anything?
Oh, I do say things, and I say them in appropriate places and appropriate venues. But I, just like they defended their guy, they didn't come out and when Monica Lewinsky was on her knees in the Oval Office with Bill Clinton, then they knew it and they didn't go out and attack him. So don't be hypocritical. Don't be hypocritical.
But when we think about where we are now, we would think about, you talked earlier about how toxic things are. Is part of that when folks come to the table, in essence, they're coming as if they're in gangs, meaning I'm going to defend my
they
turf.
come in tribes. It's tribal warfare out there right now, and people defend their tribes. And I think that that we need a tribal council. We need to set tribes aside and figure out how we're going to run and govern this country in the best interest of all people.
If you wanted to have, let's say, a discussion with Black America, debate, discussion, whatever you want to call it, who would you want on stage to have that conversation? Living.
Well, first of all, what I discovered over a period of time is very often it's a good thing to not go to, quote, leaders, but people who are living it. So if I'm going to have a discussion on welfare reform, I want to get some folks who are actually in the system and tap into them and say, what is the best advice that you can give as we reform this? If you're going to do healthcare reform, then I say talk to patients and doctors and get the policymakers and the politicians out of the room. And if you're going to talk about race, you can get any Black person in the room because we've all experienced racism in this country. So I tend to go to practitioners. I tend to go to people who are actually involved in the systems. And I intend to avoid individuals who have been either proclaimed by others or by themselves as leaders. They may have something to contribute to the conversation, but I wouldn't stop the conversation there exclusively. I want to talk to the folks.
A couple more questions. First one, when we talked about issues, I have long said, in point blank, I've said it to Reince Priebus when he ran the party. I've said it on television, on radio, to any Republican, any conservative. It is a non-starter with Black folks in this country when it comes to getting their vote, as long as the party is supporting voter suppression. Mm-hmm. And I've challenged President on that as well. I said, I don't care. You can say, oh, how much voter IDs are important. I said, but for Black folks, I said, when you talk about the vote, mm-hmm. that is something that is, if there's anything that's probably right behind Jesus, it would be the vote. Mm-hmm. And when Colin Powell went to North Carolina and challenged the governor of North Carolina, who was sitting right there, he said, it's a non-starter. And so when you are in those rooms, are you saying, look, folks, I'm telling you, if you focus on this, it's not going to go well when it comes to trying to talk to Black folks.
Yes, yes, and yes.
And do they look at you and go, but Kate, no, you don't get it. You don't understand.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I talk about all the time is the fact that, you know, we understand the preciousness of a vote. I mean, I actually had a young man who worked for me who lived, this is a true story, lived in Seattle, Washington. He worked for me in Washington, D.C., and I asked him, had he voted in the presidential? I didn't know who he was going to vote for, but I asked him, had he voted? And he said no. I couldn't afford to go home. I gave him an airline ticket from my free mileage, told him go home, fly to Seattle, cast his vote, and be back at work tomorrow morning, because I thought it was that important. When I saw the folks who actually dipped their finger and came out with pride to show that they had voted, I think even within the African American community, we need to have a stronger, better sense of that. And what I tell Republican friends is, you know what, we've got to protect that right, and then you've got to earn it. You've got to earn that vote. I want to go out there and convince them that our philosophy, thought, and ideology is right. I want them to vote, and I want them to vote with us, but I want to earn that vote. So there's no place for voter suppression, none, not in this great country called America. I should say, Roland, that I believe that there are those who actually have at their core a desire. There are some individuals who have at their core the desire to suppress votes. That is not the majority of people that I see. They are really concerned about the integrity of the vote, which concerns me as well. So I think we have to figure out ways of talking about it where we protect the integrity of the vote through voter ID or whatever means, you know, but at the same time do everything we can not to suppress the vote. And I think because Republicans are not believed or sometimes not believable, those individuals who want to protect the integrity of the ballot box are questioned and not believable because of all the other stuff surrounding it. So they assume it's voter suppression when in fact it's voter integrity.
The last question. So being president of Heritage Foundation, you're talking to largely white conservatives.
I hope not.
Well, but we know what the reality is.
I'm talking to your audience.
Right. But in terms of, in terms of who you, when you're in the room, when you're talking to different people who walk into this building, first, what do you want them to understand once you decide to leave, what it is you want to accomplish? And second, do you want them to understand that you are not the black anomaly?
Oh my gosh, yes. I am, and I truly am not the black anomaly. My story, growing up, welfare mom, absent father, and who have realized the hope and opportunity and everything that this country has to offer and have, grown to have a very successful life. My story is not that unique at all. There are many out there who have similar stories, so I am not an anomaly. I'm not an anomaly because I'm a conservative. Most black folks are, by the way. If you go right down the list, they are, but they don't vote Republican for some very important reasons, and we can talk about that at some point. I'm not an anomaly because I'm conservative, and I'm not an anomaly because of my life story. I'll tell you what is different is that God has given me the grace to come in and have the patience to work within this movement and within this community to help inform, instruct, to be taught, to have those kinds of relationships.
That's a lot of grace and patience. That's a lot of grace and patience.
Oh, golly. Well, some have it.